I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First order of business to approve the minutes of the December 13, 2010 meeting.
We approve the minutes of the December 13th board meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Darrell, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. We also have the minutes of the December 13, 2010 non-public meeting.
I move we approve the minutes of the December 13th non-public meeting.
Second.
Moved by Darrell and seconded by Charlie that those meeting minutes be approved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we move on to the minutes of the work session on December 13, 2010.
I move we approve the December 13th work session minutes.
Second.
It's been moved by Darrell, seconded by Charlie, that the work session minutes of December 13 be approved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on now to the minutes of the work session on December 20th, 2010.
I move we approve the minutes of the December 20 work session.
Second?
It's been moved by Charlie, seconded by Darrell, that those minutes be approved. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'll abstain.
And finally, the non-public minutes, or the minutes of the non-public work session on December 20th, 2010.
Move we approve the minutes of the December 20 non-public meeting as written.
Second?
It's been moved by Charlie, seconded by Darrell, that the minutes of the non-public meeting be approved. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Again, I'll abstain.
Announcements. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. Regular meetings at 6 p.m. on Monday, January 10th, 2010, 11, excuse me, and on Monday, January 24th, 2011. There will be work review sessions prior to the regular meetings, beginning at 5 p.m. All of the above meetings will be held in the Town Hall unless otherwise posted. Additional work sessions will be announced at next Monday's regular meeting. And just an observation, the meeting tonight is to take the place of the regular meeting last Monday, which was canceled based on the weather. Weather observations for the month of December are available in the Town Hall. And the agenda this evening, it's not got a great deal on it. We have no visitors, but under other business, the Safety Building Committee and their recommendations to the Select Board.
I'd be happy to do that. My computer's just taken over right now. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to conduct before we jump into that. Apparently it's something for Darrell. Is it a presentation of something that Jamie's working on?
Homework. He's doing my homework for me.
Doing homework for you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do have a correction on an announcement that we made for a school board meeting.
Mhm.
We had announced that it was January 10th, but it's February 10th. For the Penny Baker Regional School District deliberative session scheduled at 6:30 on February 10th.
6:30.
February 10th. Right.
Whenever you're ready.
We're ready.
Okay. Well, after being snowed out last week, I'm happy to be here today and to present some of the conclusions of our Public Safety Building Committee. I will say this is going to be a taste of. I'm going to walk you through the process that we engaged in, and my entire committee is here, and I'm going to introduce people in just a second, and give you some updates and our conclusions. For those of you who have been watching our committee meetings online or have been watching other select board meetings, you know a bit about our process, and I want to thank BB Cam and Jamie and the whole crew for getting as many of our meetings online as possible, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we go through. So let's just get started. Our charge that was presented to us as a committee was to develop a plan for the Plymouth Fire and Police Departments that will provide them with adequate facilities to meet their present and future requirements. That may sound simple, but as we dug into it, it was far from it. I do have, just do a little bit of focusing here. All except for one of our committee members are in attendance tonight, so I want to recognize them. Peter Bolton's not with us, but Art is here. Hello, Art, you can wave. And Mary Crowley, who is, I will say, kind enough to volunteer to be my co-chair as we proceeded through this process. And Butch Cushing from the Select Board. And I'll just say Ray Gosney. Actually, Ray, your name's not up here. That's terrible. I apologize. My bad. Apologize. And John Kelly and Dick Piper in the back row. I also want to say thanks before I go any further. We had all sorts of additional help. And if I started to try to name people, I'm afraid I would leave someone out. So I'm not. I'm just going to say thanks to all the other individuals, entities, town officials, chiefs, etc., who helped us develop data, cost estimates, and provided administrative support as we went through this process. We had several overarching goals that were important to us as a committee. We discussed this very early on. One was transparency. We wanted to make sure that everything we did was as public and available to everyone as possible. And I think we've done a very good job in accomplishing that goal. Communication. It was important that we, again, had lots of outreach, but it really important to us, in our humble opinions, is for as long as this process has been going on, there really wasn't a clear documented history of the process. So one of our goals was to make sure we left with our efforts a clear history, to develop some appropriate options to meet that charge, to develop a pro-con analysis for every one of our options. We were asked to bring not just a single solution, but some various options to the board, which is what we're doing. To look at external funding, that really kind of narrowed down to basically one thing. How do we make sure we get any Homeland Security grants that are out there? Because there is money out there for certain elements of this type of project, and those will come a little bit later. And our other theme was to leave no stone unturned. And by that, I mean that we had presented last year at the town meeting an option, a presentation to have a public safety building, combined public safety building, and it was narrowly defeated. We could have simply turned around and said, well, there's our option, let's just put it back on the table again. But we said, you know what, let's make sure there's no other option out there. And indeed, we did find some other options. I wanted to point out, thanks to PBCam, there's a great deal of information online available to you. And if you go to the town of Plymouth, and you can see right down the bottom, there's a public safety or safety building committee link, and there's a lot of information on there. For example, this is a title page from our December 1st meeting. So I'd encourage people to take a look at that. As well as there are from last year 2 videos, a walkthrough of the police station and a walkthrough of the fire station. And I would certainly encourage anyone who hasn't done that to get a chance to see the condition of the facilities and the kind of work that's being done out of those facilities. So, believe it or not, we first found over 30 sites. As a matter of fact, I think, Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there actually was 35 by the time we were done. 35 different sites that we evaluated as possible locations for either a combined facility or a site for fire or police. And anytime I say fire, please understand I'm talking fire and ambulance. So whether you want to call it rescue, fire, I'm just going to call it fire from here on out. This is the list. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through them all, but as you can see, it was a long list that we took a hard look at. Now what we did was we essentially came up with a 3-element matrix for screening these sites. If they didn't meet adequately to a certain score that we established, they didn't make the next cut for a more thorough evaluation. So we looked at the program fit, the access, the traffic concerns and patterns, as well as the response capability for all of the services that we're talking about. If they didn't score at a certain level in those 3 matrices, they were discounted. We also had a 16-element more detailed matrix that we would apply to the sites that would make it through that first cut. And some of them, again, became fairly self-explanatory. I will not go through tonight every element of that. You all have, and I should make an announcement that if anyone really wants to get into the nitty-gritty of this, we've tried to keep a copy of every single piece of information we reviewed. It's a binder about this thick here in the town hall. So anybody who would like to come and say, I'd really like to study that a little bit more, we have that information available for you. Basically, we came up with a set of remaining solutions, which we have given over to the select board. And our committee has voted that we would now move into what we consider an advisory capacity, working directly with the select board as we move this project forward to assist in any way that we can. Basically, there are 4 options or variables, even more than 4 as we get into this a little bit more, on 2 sites. And those 2 sites you'll see in a second, but basically they're 42 Highland Street, the current fire department site, 334 Main Street, or North Main Street, which is the current PD site, and one additional piece of property that we have uncovered and discovered in our process, which I'm going to call Lot 209, which is a lot immediately adjacent, and you'll see some pictures of it in a second, to the existing police department site, or 334 Main Street. Now, I'm not going to cover every option tonight. I'm going to give you a taste of them. We've presented them, and there are a lot of different ways to move excuse me, the dominoes on the board a little bit. But option 1 is a combined police facility, combined police and fire facility, and it would be located at the existing site of the police department, 334 Main Street, plus 209, the lot right adjacent to that site. And the reason we're focusing on this is because you'll see in a second, that's a fairly flat piece of land that's immediately adjacent to our current police department site, which we own, that would dramatically lower many of the excavation and site costs. That's one option. An option that's still on the table is the option presented to the town last year, which places the entire facility on the 334 North Main Street site, which is town-owned land. Extensive more site work associated with that, and that cost is certainly a key ingredient to this. And as we seek more input from constituents here in the town, want you to know that finding the least costly solution is very important to all of us. But it also needs to meet both the current and future needs of the police and fire departments. Now, this is a photo, for those of you who can see it, and if you notice right here in the right-hand corner, that's the side of the current police department with their radio communication tower right there. And what I'm going to do is walk through 3 photos to kind of give you a sense of what this lot 209 we're talking about, which is adjacent to the police lot. So as you move a little further down the road, now you start to see the corner of, it's the Red Roof Inn, is that right? Is that the name of it? But most people wouldn't realize that there is a right-of-way that cuts right through this area to the back of this property that encompasses this large flat space and runs over to the beginning of the ridge line. This, if you kept going up this hill, that would be the hill right directly behind the current police station. So with that lot added to this, it presented a number of different options. And again, there are many different options. Each option has its own sets of pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses, opportunities or lack thereof. But in this case, you'll see Route 3 running here along the bottom. And this place is a combined facility with much of it being on that flat space. And then you can see right here the topo lines. That really dense color is the very tight topo lines as you start up the side of the hill, which we do know is a combination of sand, ledge, and granite, and all sorts of other good things. So this particular option would show that there would be a driveway and parking into a complex combined, meeting the needs of both departments, situated sort of back a little bit. A variation on that same option, and Peter Bolton, who can't be with us tonight, was very, very instrumental in helping us with CAD diagrams. As an architect, he was able to create some of these. But all of these layouts are just ideas. None of these have been rendered, and officially I don't want anybody to think that this is a building ready to go. These are just ideas. Ultimately, when we move forward with our final solutions, then the company that's hired by the town will come in and give us much more concrete data with much better cost estimates. I will tell you this, that almost all of the options we've looked at are about $1 million or more, a little bit more, less than the project cost that was presented to the town last year at town meeting. I don't have at my fingertips a cost projection for what that exact project as presented last year would cost in this year's dollars. We do know it'll be less because virtually all of the construction trades are less. Earth moving companies are happy to charge you less money this year than they would have last year. So in terms of an opportune moment, I don't think there could be possibly a better time to be looking at building these buildings, because I think we're going to find our building costs are about as low as I would imagine they're going to go, but I can't predict the future. The next thing we did is we started to put together what I call our pro-con analysis. So we sat around and we started talking, okay, well, what's the good thing about this site over that site? What's the bad thing? This is just a sample, because this is a work that is in progress still. It's being edited and revised on a regular basis, and we'll work with the select board to continue to revise and edit this. But for example, when we look at option 1, I'll just give you a sense of how we did this. So some pros. Well, it co-locates all of our public safety services in one location. It has some economies of scale because there will be some shared space, even though we were quite surprised as a committee in how little space there actually is that can be shared between the different program needs of these different departments. I want to say it was 10% or less, as I recall. So it really was not a significant savings from shared space. And I'm going to turn this over to the rest of the committee if I leave anything out in a minute. These designs and this location fully meet all of the design requirements that are currently on the table for both the police and the fire department. And that's important because there are some other options that are coming next that do not do so. And there's some reasons for that, the pro-con analysis. The acquisition of this lot 209 provides much lower site development costs. Again, we don't know precisely how much, but we have some estimates because of the different topography. In some respects, it removes some congestion and noise in the current residential hospital zone where the fire station is currently located. It improves the response time and traffic conflict to some areas of the community, particularly the outlying areas of the community. And also it provides a bit of an easier hopping onto the highway for any ambulance runs to outside communities. It may allow for, and the operative word here is may, for the sale of 42 Highland Street and 334 Main Street to offset some of these costs. It's possible, if it was determined that we did not need to run an annex or a separate station downtown, that you might be able to sell that property. However, when we move to the con parts, one argument against doing that is that the fire department is now, in ambulance services, more distant from what you'll see in a minute is its primary activity area. We'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. It does require the purchase. Right now that price is approximately $90,000 for that piece of land. But I think it's safe to say that that cost would be greatly offset by the lower excavation and land development costs.
If it was determined that we still needed to operate an annex in the downtown area at 42 Highland Street, then you might have the cost, which we've been told the general operating costs of that facility are approximately $26,000 a year, just to keep that running as an annex or as a substation. There may be still some additional ledge costs, as we've talked about. Now, on the opposite side, then you might be placing noise concerns into a different part of town. You know, everything has an impact. So if you move a fire station and a police station right next to a hotel, you might increase the noise in that area. You've decreased it in one place, you might increase it in another. What does that really mean? That's part of the dialogue. Co-location of all of our services in one spot would mean that if ever, God forbid, there was a catastrophic event that damaged, destroyed, or isolated that spot, you have now isolated all of your emergency services. After an earthquake last night, I might have stood up here and laughingly said, we don't have earthquakes. Well, guess what? A little before midnight last night, we did. And, you know, for some people, there's the concern that combining all of these services, that's an uncertainty, because we've never combined the police and fire together in this community. And there are some historical concerns that can work really well, and not in this town, and others that concerns that there might be some conflict there. So again, this is just a sample. This is not meant to be the be-all and end-all, and I'm not going to do this for every site option that I'm going to talk about quickly tonight. So option 2, now we move into kind of the other scenario. This talks about a standalone fire department adjacent to the existing police department on the site that I just showed you, and using that lot 209 next door to it, and a standalone police department next to or immediately adjacent to the existing police department on that same property. So that's another option. This is what the fire station would look like tucked in the sort of back flatter area that we just talked about. Some people have concern that, do you want your fire department tucked way back in? Shouldn't that be nearer a road? Well, there are options here that can also be modified to include moving that fire station closer to the road. This is just capturing the most efficient use of that flat space. Again, cons to every choice that we have in front of us. Option 3 was a standalone police station using that small lot 209 that's next door, and a standalone fire station at the existing site. Now's where it gets a little interesting. So this is the basic area that you would build your new police station, because guess what? You need a police station. So you can't get rid of the one you have until you have something to move into. So this plan would allow for the construction of a police station adjacent to. And this would, this one, I take that back. This particular plan, and again, this dominoes could be moved. This one calls for the police station being on that flat 209 lot again to capture. One of the things we heard repeatedly through our time together is that the police do their work primarily on patrol. So as a result, their functioning space can be perhaps less right in the middle of things or less right on the road, because they really are on patrol. They're taking their work to us. On the contrary side of that, the fire and ambulance, they respond when called. They do their work is being at their station, being ready to go whenever there's an emergency and the need arises. So the fire department would remain at the existing site, which is a photo of it right here. We did look as a committee, and we've talked to the board, and we wrestled with the idea, is there property adjacent to this site that could be acquired to allow us to make this meet all of the demand requirements or all the design demands? One property that we've talked about is this one immediately adjacent. We also talked about some of the properties to the rear of the fire station. At this point in time, none of those things appear tenable. Time may change that, but at this moment there doesn't. So the plan calls for, at this juncture, placing a 2-story fire station on the existing site of the fire station, and it does not meet the full design demand needs of the fire department as they're prescribed. So this would require the construction of a small storage facility out at the police station site, 334 Main Street, to store some of the lesser used equipment, etc. There's also a concern, if when we go through our pro-con analysis, which we're underway, that this solution perhaps less meets the future needs because there's no future expansion. This would completely fill the site, and this would also end up with a very small number of parking. I believe the number was 13 parking spaces. So there are some real limitations if this proposal. Now, why would it even be considered then? Well, one of the things that we did, I'm going to jump, this is similar. This is a scatter diagram that just shows the activity of the fire department. And if you see down here, P's indicate where our firefighters currently live. Red equals fire calls, and blue equal EMS calls. Now, I want to explain a couple things about this because, a picture can be worth 1,000 words, but then the old Samuel Clemens quote, there are lies, darn lies, and statistics. So these are just calls for service. These aren't all emergencies. For example, you see this large cluster right here. Well, that's where the hospital is. So there's a lot of transports to and from the hospital, and certainly you take emergencies there as well. There's also a cluster of red fire trucks. Well, emergency vehicles have to go every time the DART helicopter responds to Plymouth. So I don't want anybody to be misled by this and say, oh, wow, look at all those critical emergencies. But on the same token, this is where the activity of the fire department and the ambulance service is located. That's the fire department, if you weren't sure. So one of the considerations, and it is one piece of information that has to be considered, is this is the primary service area of those two services. By removing the fire station and the ambulance service and putting it on the periphery of the town, you increase the response time to all this area. Is that a critical denominator? That's one of the things we're going to have to continue to process and discuss. It's an existing variable that we had to consider. I went and took pictures of the side of your trucks and the side of your site in front of it, so that's my slide background. Again, I'm not tonight going to try to go through every single, you guys have copies of some of the more detailed work, and we want to continue to work together and to assist in any way that we can as we move this forward. If I have left something significant out, I would invite the committee to share any of their thoughts at this point, and would also open it up for any questions that anyone might have.
Anyone on the committee have anything to add to this?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. And I think we've got enough of our work sessions scheduled now that we will take your recommendations under advisement and let you know what the next step is going to be.
Thank you, and I've tried to stress it, if I didn't stress it enough, that we're definitely looking for feedback and input from anyone in the community. We've gotten tremendous response. I was pleased to see when I went into the PBCAM website that 800 people, 800 hits on the videos section, so I thought of just the public safety building, and I thought that was a great sign. I know many of us on the committee have been stopped by people on the streets who have been watching and trying to keep apprised of this, but we welcome feedback, welcome input. You can contact myself or anyone at the town hall, and we'll make sure to get your thoughts included in the process.
Anyone else on the board have any questions?
Just a comment. I'd like to express appreciation for the work that Tim did. He took it upon himself to put this communications tool together, and I think he did an excellent job of trying to encapsulate essentially 8 months' worth of work into a format that essentially rolls everything up. Thank you.
And I'd like to not only thank Tim, but thank the entire committee for the amount of work that went into this. It was exhaustive, comprehensive, and you're not done yet. So, thank you. Yes.
I had one question about extra fire equipment. Is there a sense of how much space would be required at the police site to house that, or was there an inventory? Just kind of, that was part of your thinking, but you didn't do an actual inventory of what equipment wouldn't fit?
We actually have done that. The fire chief has provided that information. I couldn't tell you the square footage right off the top of my head, but essentially it was your homeland security trailers, your hazardous response equipment, and an antique piece of fire apparatus.
It's equipment we have stored elsewhere now.
Things that are already being stored elsewhere.
So you're thinking of building or a temporary structure?
It would need some minimal heat, so it would have to be in a enclosed structure, because there are things, as we understand it, that can't be subject to freezing.
Okay,
Something like a butler building.
thanks.
All right. Do we have any public comments? There being none, I move that we go to a non-public session in accordance with RSA 91-A:3, 2A, personnel and union negotiations.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Non-public session.
Yeah, us too.